You know you're doing something right with Star Wars when the death of an Ugnaught can bum out your audience. How's it going, everybody? This is Phil, and this is my review recap of The Mandalorian Episode 7. This would have gone up a little bit earlier, but we had something get in the way. I don't know, the Rise of Skywalker. So I felt that I need to get that review up first before I got this one up. Of course, there will be spoilers in this recap. That's what it is inherently. It's a recap, so spoilers will ensue, and there might be some stuff from Rise of Skywalker that creeps its way into this review as well. So if you're trying to avoid any kind of spoilers from that movie, maybe avoid this video and then circle back to it when you've seen that as well. So anyway, let's get into it. So the episode opens up, and we're on the Razor Crest, and the Mandalorian, he gets a message from Grief Karga, and Grief Karga basically tells him that come on back to Navarro, bring the child, and we'll get you close enough to the client, and then you can kill him. I'll clear your name with the guild, and then everyone just goes about their way. So the Mandalorian, he thinks it over, and he looks down at the computer, and you see him start charting the course, and he ends up flying back to the planet where he was laying low for a while, and he met up with Cara Dune. Cara Dune's in there. She's bare knuckle boxing, people just making some money. All of these civilized people all of a sudden seem like a bunch of animals in this town. When he showed up and it was so peaceful. But anyway, he explains to her what's going on. She has no desire to get involved with anything, involved in the New Republic, and he basically tells her, look, this is a old Imperial officer, and she's like, I'm in. So she goes with him, gets on the ship, and then they make their way down into like the cargo area, and he opens up that gun cabinet that he has there, that apparently anyone could just open it up if you hit a couple of buttons. He should really work on putting a better code in there. His code is probably like 1 2 3 4 5 6, but maybe work on that, because anyone seems to be able to open that thing up whenever they want. But anyway, they're talking about what's going on, and you see like little Yoda, baby Yoda, his head pokes down, and he looks and sees what's going on, and they continue to talk about the whole situation, and all of a sudden the ship, it just bucks, and I'm like, oh man, they're caught in a tractor beam. That was my initial reaction, like who the hell is this that's intercepting the Razor Crest? And then they go up to the bridge of the ship, and you see it's Baby Yoda.
But they'll never take our freedom!
And he's got the yoke, and he's just steering the thing around, and it's just like he's just a menace. Like you can't leave him alone for a moment. He's just gonna flip buttons and drive ships in all the kinds of different directions. I mean, the kid, he's a little troublemaker in the cutest way possible, of course. So Cara Dune's like, look, we need somebody who can watch that thing. Do you have anybody you can trust? And Mandalorian's like, yeah, I believe I do. And then, we end up going back to the planet where the Mandalorian first intercepts the kid, and we meet Quill. And as they're talking to him, IG-11, he comes into the hut, and immediately the Mandalorian and Cara Dune, they draw their weapons, and Quill's like, no, he's okay. I reprogrammed him, and you see IG-11, and it is kind of like, because there's no expression, it's kind of like the Mandalorian, but this is a droid, and it was a cold killer. And the camera's kind of like moving slowly up on IG-11, and you just see like these red little beady eyes that are like peering back at him, and like it's like the tension kind of builds a little bit, and he's just like, T. It's like, okay. But Mandalorian doesn't trust him. He's just like, look, once a killer, always a killer. He has the issues with the droids and everything. Anyway, the Mandalorian, he offers the job to Quill, and Quill, he initially refuses, and he says, I can send IG-11. He's like, I don't want the thing anywhere near him. But then, he does say okay. He'll bring IG-11 with him as a protector, and he's going to bring 3 blurgs as well. So it's like, now we have, like, there's a whole team assembled here, right? We have the Mandalorian, we have the Child, we have Cara Dune, we have Quill, we have IG-11, we have 3 Blurgs. I mean, there's a whole squad that are now on the Razor Crest, going to make their way back to Navarro, and it's kind of like, all right, cool. Like, now this whole show is now like starting to come together. You know, everything that we've been introduced to is like it's all converging in this storyline. So. You know, they're back on the Razor Crest, and you know, you see the Mandalorian. You know, he's got a little bit of downtime while they make their way to Navarro, and he's arm wrestling Cara Dune. And during that whole time, you know, you see Baby Yoda in the background, and he sees the Mandalorian. He's struggling with Cara Dune, which is like, all right, whatever. But you know, Baby Yoda is kind of like, hey man, that's my protector. Like, he seems to be. You know, maybe in distress, and he starts force choking Cara Dune. And you know what? Baby Yoda might be cute as all hell, but you better watch your ass around him, because that little bastard will choke you out. He'll kill you right on the spot, as cute as he may be. So they get to Navarro, and you know, they meet with Grief Karga, and he has 3 members of the guild with him. They're going to escort them back over the lava fields into town, and you know, they meet up in a remote location, and you know, when he sees, he's like, you know, can I see the child? And he opens up the crib. I believe Quill called it a prim. He fashions a new one on the ship. Anyway, you know, they meet up with Grief Karga, and he sees Baby Yoda, and he like lifts it up, and the Mandalorian like reaches for his firearm, and it's like there's that moment of tension where like you don't know what's going to happen. Like, anything that's involved with this child, when he's in jeopardy, you know, and the Mandalorian's always kind of trying to play it cool. He doesn't show his hand, but you know, he's always kind of like one moment away from drawing his, you know, his firearm and hailing down, you know, hellfire on somebody. And you know, Grief Karga, he puts the child back into the prim. And you know, everything's okay. So they start making their way across the lava fields, and you know, they set up camp. And you know, it's late at night, and they're eating, and they're going over the plan. And then all of a sudden they're attacked, you know, by these flying creatures, and it's just, I mean, just like right out of the darkness, you know. Grief Karga, he's going to get something to eat, you know, at the spit, and this thing just kind of flies in, you know, and all of a sudden they just open fire, and they don't know where these things are coming from. They don't know how many they are. And you know, it's kind of like, it reminds me of a little bit of like the Minox from Empire Strikes Back, and then also kind of like you know, like Pitch Black. Like, you just like, you don't know what's going on here. It's kind of terrifying. It was a really cool scene, nice little action scene in the midst of all of this. And you know, one of the Blurgs gets taken away. You know, another one gets killed. One of the bounty hunters, you know, one of the guild members, he gets swept up in this whole melee. And Grief Karga, he gets wounded, and you know, his arm is just like, it's ripped open, and he's got, you know, these creatures, I guess they leave poison behind, and it goes quickly through the skin, you know, into the bloodstream. And you know, Cara Dune, she's asking for a med pack. She's trying to, you know, just take care of him the best she can. And you know, little Baby Yoda, he comes walking over, and you know, and Cara's like, you know, get this thing away, you know, get this thing out of here. You know, and Quill's just like, wait, and you know, Baby Yoda, he puts his hand on him, and he uses the Force, and he force heals. So he heals Grief Karga. You know, and it's funny too, because like when Baby Yoda walks up to Grief Karga, he's like, he's gonna eat me. It's like so ridiculous. You know, he's a little tiny thing. It's gonna eat him alive. I thought that was funny. If they flash to the next day, and they get like right on the outskirts of town, and Grief is just kind of like, all right, you know, this is it. And you know, he walks in front of Cara Dune, and the Mandalorian and the 2 bounty hunters are in back of them, and they kind of get ready to reach and draw on, you know, Cara and the Mando, and then Grief just turns around really quick, and he just guns down the 2 guild members, and it's just like, you know, all of a sudden it's kind of like, what the hell's going on? And you know, he's like, look man, I had a change of heart, you know, after you know, the child healed me, you know, I couldn't give him to the client, and you know, then and Cara Dune, she doesn't trust him, so you know, they come up with this plan. Mandalorian is like, look, bring me in as your prisoner. you know, I'll get close enough to him, and then I'll just kill him. And you know, Cara Dune's like, hell no, you know, like, you're not going into town without me. And he's just like, you know, and she's like, I'm coming with you. And you know, Grief Karga's like, no way. And you know, he's just like, all right, then tell them that she captured me. So, you know, all said, they all go into town, and the place is just crawling with you know, stormtroopers and biker scouts. I mean, it's just like, you know, since since that whole standoff happened, you know, the client, he's basically just taken up there, and now the place is like, it's on lockdown. Like, nobody can conduct any kind of guild business. The whole place is at a standstill now because of what's been going on with this child and the old imperial forces trying to get this bounty, and you know, and the client's still sticking around there, and then, you know, there's a bigger story at hand here. So they're not going anywhere until they get what they're after. So anyway, they and in all of this, you know, the Mandalorian, he sends Quill back to the Razor Crest with the child, and he's just like, you know, just lock it down. Like, there's nothing on this planet that'll be able to get through those doors if you put the Razor Crest on lockdown. So you know, he goes back to the ship. They come into town, and then, you know, they go into the cantina, and the client, you know, he goes to, you know, he has a little monologue. You know, he's like, you know, I don't understand why the Mandalorians resisted, you know, the Imperial way of things. You know, it's so much better. All I see now is chaos. And, you know, he goes through this whole spiel. And you know, as he's delivering his monologue, like, more troops walk in, because initially it was only supposed to be 4. Now there's like a whole team of troops that are in there. And Cara Dune was like, what the hell? I thought you said it was only gonna be 4. You know, and so then he wants to, at one point, he's like, can I see the baby? You know, and Grief Karga's like, he's sleeping, you know, and he's like, we will be quiet. It's so funny, you know, like, of course they'll be quiet. He's like, let me see the damn baby. And like, again, you're like, what are they going to do? Because it's not even in there. And just at that moment, a trooper walks up and he whispers into the client's ear, and he's just like, I have to take this call. So he goes over, and, you know, they open up like this mobile hologram, you know, transmitter, and you see Moff Gideon show up for the first time on screen. And, you know, while this is all going on, the Mandalorian, you know, he takes his shackles off, he gets his blaster, he's getting ready. And, you know, Moff Gideon's just like, you know, do you have the child? He's like, yeah, he's asleep, you know. And Moff Gideon's like, I think you should check again. He makes like this hand gesture, and all of a sudden, just laser fire just rains down into the room, and it takes out the client right away. I mean, it just blows a hole right through his chest, takes out the stormtroopers that are there. You know, Cara, Mando, and Grief, they all, like, they get behind like a table or something like that, and everyone else just gets like annihilated. So it's only the 3 of them are left. And while this is going on, Quill, he's still making his way to the Razor Crest. And the Mandalorian, he radios over to him, he hits him on the comm link, and he's just like, look, man, he's like, you know, you got to get out of here. You know, just bail out. Take the child, bail out. And, you know, they're surrounded, and two biker scouts that were initially right at the gates to get into town. They intercept the message. They take off on their speeder bikes, and those things are so fast. So you know they're gonna catch up with Quill before he makes it over to the Razor Crest. And then it goes back to the Mandalorian, and, you know, we see a TIE fighter land, and it does a cool thing where it's wings. They just they collapse. Look at me. So and that's how it lands. So it's something I've kind of never seen before. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And you know, Moff Gideon gets out, and he's saying, like, you know, they don't understand what they have in their possession, and, you know, they intend to get what they came for. And the whole time, the Mandalorian, he's trying to get in contact with Quill, and Quill at this point, he's just racing on the blurg. He's trying to get there as fast as he can, and you know, I mean, these things can only go so fast. They're just kind of like big hulking beasts, you know, that are good for long range but not speed. They should have one of those space horses from The Rise of Skywalker. He would have got there much quicker. But anyway, it's like this back and forth, and it's like you see the Razor Crest. It's right there. It's within like maybe 100 yards or so. But then you have the biker scouts there. They're just coming up on him, and like they turn it up to like the next notch, and you see the Mandalorian. He's screaming for Quill, and the next thing you see is the Baby Yoda. He's on the floor, and a biker scout comes in, and he swoops in, he scoops him up, he takes off, and then you see Quill, just lying there, and the blurg is on the ground, and you see Quill, and it appears that his back is just smoking from being hit by a laser blast, and he's just laying there, motionless, and just not responding, and at that point you got to figure, because they only show him for a moment, so you figure he's dead, or he's mortally wounded. He's at the point where, because you don't see him breathing, but again, they only show him for a moment. So if he is alive, like, it seems that he's barely hanging on by a thread, and then that's it. And then it closes out. The episode closes out, and they play, actually, not the heroic theme of the show, but they play like more like a somber musical cue to close out the episode, and it's a cliffhanger. It's a hell of a cliffhanger, because you're like, what's going to happen now? As far as this episode goes, I love this episode. This is what I've been wanting for the last several episodes. After episode 3, we got episode 4, where we introduced to Cara Dune. Nice little episode, Magnificent 7. Then we go on to episode 5, where we get that little side quest on Tatooine, which really didn't amount to nothing in the grand scope of this show for the most part. And then, we get the last episode with the prison break. But this episode, it really, it ties everything together. Like I said in my review of episode 6, like, we have all of these, we've introduced characters and locations and vehicles and everything in this show. And we have all of these elements, that we've created, that we have in this sandbox. Like, let's put all the toys in here, shake it up, and see what we got. And this is the episode that did it. It brings everything in. We get the Mandalorian, we get the Client, we get Grief Karga, we get Cara Dune, we get Quill, we get blurgs. We get the locations that we've been to before, and we could see now the fruits of the labor of the world building that are taking place in this show, and it's very rewarding. Like, this show, for like maybe I think it was a 38-minute total runtime, it felt very cinematic, because as they're building up the assets and the characters and the locations, it makes it easier for them to go back to it now, because first of all, as an audience, person in the audience, watching this, you've seen it, so you're familiar with these characters, so we don't have to worry about the exposition necessarily, although we do get some of that with the return of IG-11 and a little bit more exposition with Quill. And we find out that he was sold into indentured service, and he worked 3 human lifetimes with his hands to get out from underneath that, to find his freedom, which is a shame, because if he's gone now, like, he's had so many hardships, and this is the way that he goes out. But despite all of that, it's the reward of watching this show and sticking with it, and then seeing everything culminate and come together. It really is very rewarding, very, very rewarding, and I loved it. When they're all on the Razor Crest together before they get to Navarro, it's like, this is fantastic. Like, all of these different elements from all of these different episodes have now come together, and even then when we bring Grief Karga in, and I gotta say, Grief Karga is he's really grown on me. First of all, I love the fact that Carl Weathers is in this show, right? I don't know what he's been doing, if he's been working on other projects before this show, but I thought it was great to see him back in something like a high-profile project, and I like the character. He kind of reminds me a little bit of like a Lando Calrissian, where it's like he's he starts off in one path, and then he could be a friend, and then he ends up being a foe, but then he has a change of heart, and in these types of kind of dynamic characters, like you appreciate it, right? They have their sense of agency, you know, and things happen, and they just like, they're not necessarily one note characters, and that might have been something you could have originally said about Grief Karga in the earlier episodes, but I think he's to me he's far more interesting now, because he's, you know, he could get in trouble with the guild for doing what he's done, you know, but he's just like, no, there's something bigger. There's a bigger picture here. You know, I can't let the the imps get their hands on this kid. Like there's something else going on. So, you know, this episode, it's just so funny, because it did more for me. I was more invested, you know, after. Really, I mean, this episode is just the culmination of episode 1 through 4, right? I mean, episodes 5 and 6, they don't really necessarily tie in to the overall, this big story that we were introduced to in the first 3 episodes. But you know, episode 4 we get Cara Dune. So it's amazing how in just 4 episodes, by the time we get to episode 7, I'm more invested in all of these characters and the story, and feel more for characters like Quill than I ever did with 3 whole movies of the Disney sequel trilogy. And you know, look, that's a testament to you know, Jon Favreau and the storytelling and the directing, and just the way that they chose to do this, and they took it seriously, and you know, they took the time to kind of, you know, build this out a little bit here, and even though these episodes have been so short, somehow they managed to get enough characterization into where you feel something for the child, and you feel something for the Mandalorian, and you like Cara Dune, and you know, you like Grief Karga and Quill and all of these characters that we've been introduced to, and this story is it has your interest. It's like, what's going to happen now? You know, where do we go from here? Are the Imperials going to make off with Baby Yoda, and are we going to have to wait to season 2 to finally catch up with this? Or is there a conclusion that comes out of this now? I mean, with 1 episode left to go, who knows? I mean, I think with episode 8, it's going to pick up. I think Quill might still be barely alive. I think IG-11 is going to come out, and he's going to see him, and Quill's dying directive towards IG-11 is going to be to take the Razor Crest into town and do whatever he needs to do to try to get the child back and save his friends. And I think you know, at the right moment, IG-11 is going to come in, and he's going to prove his worth. Like, the Mandalorian is going to maybe have a change of heart, at least towards this droid, and you know, he'll take him under the fold. He'll be then a recurring character going forward into season 2, if he doesn't get wasted when he shows up in the Imperial. With all the Imperial troops, and you know, that's what I think that might happen. That how he's able to get out of it. One other thing, as far as the Imperial troops are concerned, before I close this out, I thought it was interesting when they're surrounding the cantina, and an Imperial troop transport shows up, and you know, you see the troops. They're like on the side of this transport, and that's something that was released back in the day, and that was a creation by Kenner Toys. That never showed up in the original movies, and it came out back in the late 70s, and it was something that just kind of found its way eventually into official canon. I mean, it showed up in Rebels, it showed up in Expanded Universe, you know, I think video games and novels and things of that nature, but this is the first time we've actually got to see one live on screen. So that was actually pretty cool. Again, a nice little Easter egg where if you didn't realize it, if you didn't know about the Imperial transport, you know, the troop transporter, you would have missed it. You just thought it was another vehicle. But for people who do know, or people who are fans of Star Wars, who might have had the toy or something like that, it's cool that they put that in there. So again, another thing about the show that you just, you know, you have to appreciate is like these nice little Easter eggs that they throw in there. So anyway, I love this episode. This is one of my favorite episodes. Again, directed by Deborah Chow. So now she's done 2 of the better episodes in this series. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what she does with the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. So I mean, I'm I have a lot of faith in her because, you know, twice now she's come in and she's directed stellar episodes of The Mandalorian. You know, two of the better episodes, really, that we've seen. So I can't wait to see what she does in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. She's given me a lot of faith that that's going to be something that is going to be done really well. And, you know, hopefully the story is good. I mean, because again, it all falls on the story. But, you know, this episode, really great, really fantastic. Love that we brought everybody into it. I mean, it just makes it feel bigger, right? With some of these episodes, these side mission shows, they felt smaller. Like this felt big because we had so many, there's such a big cast, all of these players all coming in and converging in this one storyline. So I was really, really happy with the way that this episode went, and I'm looking forward to the conclusion of this and the climax of the season. I mean, I'd love to see them give it a full hour of just nonstop action, you know, and that would be, nothing would make me happier, you know, especially after the Rise of Skywalker. But anyway, guys, let me know. Did you like this episode? Is this one of your absolute favorites? Because it is one of mine. I mean, it's right up there at the top. You know, comment down below, like, subscribe if this is your first time here. Really appreciate that. And I will talk to you guys sometime soon. As always, be happy, be safe, be healthy. Have a great night, guys. Bye-bye.
It's the Star Wars Imperial Troop Transporter that you put together. Batteries not included. Stormtroopers sold separately.
What's that?
It's my troop transporter. It makes 5 more sounds, too.
R2-D2, where are you?
There's the laser cannon, stun gun, and stormtrooper.
Did he say that?
Oh, Dad.
Star Wars Imperial Troop Transporter. Stormtroopers sold separately. New from Kenner.